name is Paul Contreras, raised in El Paso, but I was actually born in Muleshoe, Texas. The reason for that is that my parents were at the time were living in Clovis, New Mexico. Uh, my understanding is that they were at a gathering of the nations in Oklahoma, and on their way back they crossed through the panhandle of Texas when I popped out. I found out later that my aunts and uncles didn't know I existed till I was almost 2 years old. My mom never told anybody that she had me. After living in Clovis, I don't really remember much of that. I was too small, but we did move to El Paso in 1964. My father bought a house there on Globe Circle, and that's where we grew up. El Paso's always been my home since then. I haven't left to live anywhere else except for a short while. I lived in Silver City. As far as that cooking, I got into cooking by watching my mother and my father explain to us, when you grow to be a man, you will not always have a wife to take care of you. Sometimes you'll take care of yourself. So my father made sure to it that each of us knew how to cook before leaving the house. My father was a very educated man. He served in the military during World War II. He was a medic. He was also one of the first radio reporters that used to report the news in Spanish out of New Mexico. He started the first Hispanic or Mexican newspaper out of New Mexico. My father was also a minister, school teacher. We were raised in the church, Baptist. My mother, also from New Mexico, was a dietitian and also a nurse. She mostly took care of us while we were in school. Once we were all gone to school, she went to work again and continued working up until she died. I lost my father in 1985, my mother in 1991. The reason I got back into cooking was because my youngest son, Solomon, never got the opportunity to taste some of the foods that my parents had made for us and his older brothers. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to start making some of the recipes that I could remember for my son Solomon. And that got me into making the biscuits, sopapillas, tortillas, frijoles, enchiladas. There's another dish she's asked me to make. I haven't made it lately. It's, can't remember what it's called. Chicken. Do you remember what it's called?
Chicken and dumplings.
Chicken and dumplings. I'm sorry. I can say my memory is not what it used to be. But that's actually how I got back into cooking. It was for my son. And then, since my wife is now working and I am now retired, I decided to do most of the cooking at home. So I make sure to it that we have something to eat, whether it be chicken, fish, beans, rice, biscuits, sopapillas, chicken and dumplings, whatever. I don't mind cooking. In fact, I enjoy it. But some days not so much. And that's basically how I got into cooking. Prior to that, though, when my son was just a little boy, I used to work as a mechanic. I was AC certified. I did frame straightening, body work, engine overhauls, transmission overhauls, brake jobs, suspension. You name it, I did it on cars. I know how to do all that. I still remember how to do most of that. I just cannot physically do it anymore. I got into making motorcycles. I've built motorcycles my whole life. I still got one left, which I am going to give over to my son Solomon. It's an old Harley Davidson, 1966. It's sitting at the house right now breeding spiders, but it's for Solomon. It does run. After being a mechanic, I joined the Texas Parks and Wildlife. That was actually a fluke by accident how I got that one. I was out riding my bike one day and I passed by Waco Tanks. Hadn't been there since I was a kid. And I decided to drive in, and there was no one at the front gate, so I drove in, drove around, didn't stop. I just kind of drove through the roads. When I came out, I was stopped by a gentleman standing there and told me that I had to pay to get in. I apologized to him, told him I didn't know, I didn't see anybody there, so I just rode through. I said, but I didn't get out and walk, I just took a little ride. We got to talking, and he told me he was looking for a maintenance assistant. So I applied. And later that night when I got home, my wife had told me that Ray Sierra had called me. Didn't know who that was. Then later I remembered that was the park ranger that I had talked with. He was a manager at Waco Tanks. I called him and he hired me that night to tell me if I could be working the next day, and that's how I got started in Texas Parks and Wildlife. I went from Waco Tanks to Franklin Mountains, to the McGoffin Home, to the Tramway, to the Devil's Sinkhole, Devil's River. Pretty much worked all over Texas for a while, but settled in El Paso since I'm from El Paso. And that is where I met Mary Kay Shannon. She was the site manager for the McGoffin Home, and she offered me a position as the lead ranger ADSO for the McGoffin Home. And I liked that idea. I said, well, I don't have to hike in the desert. I don't have to deal with the cold or the wind or the rain. So I settled at McGoffin Home, and I worked there for many years. Enjoyed it, learned a lot of history about El Paso that I didn't know before. One day I was going through some books that we found there, and I found some recipes. I said, hey, I know how to make that stuff. And my boss said, you know how to make that? I said, yeah, I know how to make that. She would make some for us, so I did. And they were traditional Mexican dishes. She had never heard of chilaquiles, and I told her it's pretty much like an enchilada. It's just shredded more. They're cut up con tortillas. I said, but it's pretty much the same thing as enchiladas, but they're called chilaquiles. And when we went on a trip to San Angelo one time for the state, she took me to a Mexican restaurant in San Angelo, which I had to laugh. Because she ordered chilaquiles, and I watched them making them through the window going into the kitchen. And they were using what looked like tortilla chips or Doritos. And I said, those are not chilaquiles, man. I'm sorry. They're gorditas. They called them something else. I couldn't remember what they were called. And I started laughing. I said, those are not gorditas. Gorditas are made of cornmeal. They're thicker. After they're cooked, you slice them and you fill them with beans, meat, cheese, lettuce, tomato, whatever you like, onions. That's where we were raised, to eat stuff like that. It wasn't this more commercialized stuff I saw in the eastern part of Texas. It was completely different. And I've noticed that southern New Mexico and El Paso, cooking varies from that up north. Even when you go to Albuquerque, it's a little bit different. Places that I've been to, they say this is menudo, and to me it was called pozole. There's a big difference. Anything else you need to know?
Take us back a little bit, and let's go back to your early life, your childhood, and maybe talk a little bit more about some of the food that you ate as a kid.
Well,
and was your mom the one who cooked, and what kinds of things did she cook?
In my household, my father and my mother both cooked. They were both very good cooks. Nobody has ever, and I can't even do it. I've tried many times and can't do it. Could match my father's menudo. He used to sit up all night, and he would sit there and wash it and clean it and cut it just right, and oh my God, it was delicious. The smell was horrible, but all menudo smells bad when you're cooking it, but it was delicious. My mom couldn't match it. Nobody could match my father's menudo, but both my mom and father cooked. My mom saw to it that every day we had fresh tortillas, biscuits. We always ate a lot of beans, rice. We ate enchiladas, we ate chicken, we ate fish, we ate different stuff. My parents were big into camping when we were kids. They always took us camping. And I remember, as a matter of fact, my uncle still does it to this day. We pulled fish out of the river, the Gila. And I like trout, rainbow trout. I got into rainbow trout. It's a good fish. And my father used to fish, and my uncle, and all of us. And we would clean the fish, freeze them, and bring them home. And we ate fresh fish. It was never store-bought fish. Of course, nowadays it's hard to get fresh fish. Everybody's got them at the delis, but it's, to me, not the same. Unfortunately, I can't hike anymore, so I don't get to do fishing. But as kids, we grew up camping every year. Like I said, my father was a minister, so every year we used to go to Cloudcroft, and there was this huge cabins. And there, everybody would get together and cook. All the adults would cook for the kids, and we'd run around and have fun. I remember the bears coming down at night and raiding our trash cans. I was still very small, so unfortunately I had to sleep with the women in their bunkhouse and never got to stay with my dad and my brother in the men's bunkhouse because I was still too small at the time. Later, when my father left the church and went back to teaching full time, we no longer went there, but we still went camping on a pretty regular basis. My aunt, my mom's sister also, same thing, fresh tortillas, beans, rice. In fact, my uncle made sure there was beans at every dinner. I don't care what they had, there was a pot of beans at his table. That's what we were raised, and that's what we grew up with, was more traditional, I guess, Mexican style food. I mean, I've eaten other stuff, like lasagna and stuff like that. My mom made it, but we spent most of our childhood eating mostly Mexican foods, beans, rice, enchiladas, tortas, chile rellenos, stuff like that. So we always had fresh tortillas. I just think it was funny. Those times I'd come home from work, what then do with my wife, and I'd get a call from my mother that, hey, stop by and pick up tortillas. I'm like, why are you making tortillas? And my sons would call my mom and say, hey, Dorothy, can you make us tortillas, please? So my mom would make them a big old stack of tortillas, and I was like, oh my God, you guys, my mom's old, don't we make her do this stuff anymore? But I understand that the tortillas, I wish my youngest got to eat them, but he never did. I can't do them as good as my mom. I try, but no cigar. And that's actually what my mom taught me. She goes, that dough you make for your tortillas and your biscuits, you can also use to make sopapillas. And it tastes fantastic. Okay, I was saying my father's side of the family were more Native American. That's when I think I was probably about 8 years old. I remember meeting, I want to say one of my dad's cousins, and his wife was making what they called fry bread. And I said, hey, look, Mom, they're making sopapillas. She goes, no, mijo, that's fry bread. I said, what's the difference? And that's when I found the difference. Depending upon the native culture that you come from, some natives put a little bit of sugar in their dough to sweeten it just a touch. Some do not. But you fry it at a lower heat so it doesn't fluff as much. It's actually a little bit thicker, and that's called fry bread, and they're made in bigger pieces. And like, oh, okay, so I learned how to do fry bread. When I asked my dad about that, he told me, yes, son, he goes, our family reigns from the Mescalero Apache. My father's name was Daniel Contreras. His father's name, I believe, was Jesus Contreras. And my grandma's name I cannot pronounce. I think it was Aquilina Contreras. I'm not sure where they were from. I know it was New Mexico area. My father was born in Santa Rita in 1921. My mother, her name was Dorothy. She was born back then. It was called Vallinesville. Her family owned mostly all of that property. They were a wealthy family. Unfortunately, I never met my mother's side of the family because they died when my mother was a young girl. And she, my Aunt Gloria, my Uncle Junior, and my Aunt Irene were raised by one of their uncles. But now the town is called, I want to say, it's called Baird. And it's there by Fort Baird, New Mexico. But back in the day it was called Vallinesville because they owned most of that property. Like I say, my mother was a very good cook. She was also a dietitian and a nurse. Very educated woman, very loving woman. My parents were actually very mellow people. They didn't drink, they didn't smoke, they didn't cuss. I cannot remember my mother or father ever taking a hand to me or a belt to me. We weren't raised that. We were raised with love, not fear. So we had a good life. In fact, my wife said, "Oh my God, Paul, you had a Beaver Cleaver life." I said, "Well, if I did, I thank God for it. I've never had to hit any of my kids. I hope I never do. They've always been very good kids. I've never had any problems with my kids. I do enjoy cooking for them, especially the grandkids. They'll even call me, "Grandpa, are you going to make some puppies?" I said, "I can make you some if you like." But now that's changed. Everybody wants them covered with sugar and cinnamon. Not the way they were done traditionally, what you would eat with honey. So they've actually, I guess, Americanized. I don't know how to say it, but things have changed over the years. It's not the same as when we were kids. I mean, I try telling my grandkids these stories that I was told when I was young, and right away my son Jason and his wife said, no, don't tell them that, you'll scare them. And they're folklore stories. I mean, everybody's heard of La Llorona and all these other things, but it always happened in their city or their part. I don't think it ever existed. So, I mean, to me, they're just stories. There's ghost stories we were told as kids, and I never put much stock into them as a child. I mean, they used to scare me when I was a child, but as I got older, I didn't put much stock into them. Until I started working at McLaughlin Home. Then that kind of made me a little bit more of a believer. I saw things there that I can't explain. Too freaky. I had psychics come in. I remember one psychic in particular was a younger lady, and she kept telling me about a dog by the fireplace. And I looked at her and I go, okay, this lady's a nut. But I was friendly to her, and I kept taking her to the home. And she goes, you know what, the dog keeps jumping on me. And I didn't know what she was talking about. Well, about 6 months later, we had the Ladies Auxiliary Club having a luncheon at the McLaughlin Home. And I was sitting in my boss's office, and we saw a man drive up coming towards us from walk, and she told me, go catch him before he rings the bell. So I ran out the back and around the building, and I caught him, and he told me. I was clearing out a utility room, storage room, and I found a bunch of paperwork that you guys might be interested in. And I'm thinking, what kind of paperwork would he have? I said, well, let's go take a look what you got. And in the back of his truck, he had boxes and boxes full of letters, photographs, and memorabilia from the McLaughlin Home. I'm like, oh my God. I said, yes, back your truck in. I showed him where to back, and I took him to the back room where I worked out of the maintenance shed, and we unloaded. And I thanked him. He left, and I went and got my boss and said, when this is done, you need to come see what this man brought. And when she saw it, she flipped. And she told me a story how some manager they had there before had been fired, and he was angry, and he took a lot of the stuff with him. And we couldn't find it. Now we found it. But as I was going through it, I found a picture of two little dogs sitting on the fireplace where the lady had told me the dog was there. And I was like, how could she have possibly have known this? This picture had not been seen in many, 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 many years, and she was younger than I was. So maybe she was a psychic. I don't know. My daughter-in-law will not go through the home. It scares her. I remember I used to work with this one ranger. His name was Jorge Marufo. Big guy. He was 6'4", 300 pounds, big guy. And one weekend, one Saturday morning, he and I walked in, and we were getting the place ready, turning on the lights and so forth, and opening curtains. When we found one of the beds had an imprint of a body laying on it. And back then, what we called the general's room there looked like somebody had been jumping on the bed. So Jorge, right away, he called the boss, and he said, were you here with your dogs? And she goes, no, why? And he told her what we found, and she goes, get pictures, get video. We did. When I was doing the video, he was doing the pictures. I scanned the camera across one part of the room when a flash shot through it. I didn't think much of it at the time, but when we later were looking at the video, lo and behold, a little girl appeared in that flash. And I had asked Bud Deercup about her, and he said that her name was Rose White, and that they had a picture of her. I said, yeah, that's the picture that Ruben had taken. He was, yeah. So I was with Ruben when he took the picture. I said, he didn't take the picture. I said, his camera went off by itself. He goes, what? I said, yeah, we were walking from the back bedroom towards the formal dining room when the camera went off. I said, and the little girl came out. I said, I thought it was a water stain. But after we got it looked at closer, you could actually see the imprint of a little girl standing there against the doorway. And she went by the name of Rose White. The house is now surrounded by retirement homes, and I've had many people tell me that at night they see a lady in blue walking through the yard, or a short little fat man walking with a round derby hat. And I start laughing because if you look at pictures of Joseph and his wife Octavia, that's what they look like. And I was like, wow, it's something else. So that kind of made me a believer, but I gotta say I enjoyed it there. I would have retired there had the state not cut funding. I did like it. It was a lot of fun. I traveled a lot. And as the ADSO, which is the Additional Duty Safety Officer, I did more traveling actually than my boss. And it was always paid for by the state. And since my brother worked at Franklin, he was the ADSO. We used to go together. And Jorge was ADSO at Waco, Smiley for the complex, and Beto for the tram. We'd all go together. And we'd have a blast. In fact, a lot of times we'd ditch the meetings and go fishing. But yeah, that's basically what I did. After Texas Parks and Wildlife, I bought a tow truck, and things were going good for a short while. But unfortunately, El Paso Towing Associates went out of business and started selling their tow trucks. And since the insurance I had to carry was so expensive, it got hard to compete. So I sold my tow truck, and I went trucking. And I was doing that for a while till my wife Linda called me one day. She goes, you need to talk to your son. I said, why? She goes, he's taking off at 2 or 3 in the morning, and I don't know where he's going. So I said, okay, and I talked with him, but he wouldn't tell me where he was going either. So I left the trucking business, and I hired on with Sun Metro. And I worked there until August of 2017, because in January 2017, I suffered a heart attack, which kind of messed me up. From there, it went downhill. I had to change my diet. I had to change everything. I tried to go back driving, but in August, I was driving a 60-foot articulated bus, Route 59, and I almost parked that bus inside the Wells Fargo downtown. I said, no, you know what, I can't do this. I'm going to kill somebody, myself included. So I said, I got to get out of this. So I went ahead and retired from the city. Like I said, from then it's gone downhill. My arthritis has gotten severe. My hands hurt, so I don't do much sopapillas or biscuits anymore. My knees hurt, so I can't sit very long, I can't stand very long, and I can't walk very far. So I'm kind of like this bad situation right now. But my son has set up my TV so I can actually watch a lot of programs now. So I'm actually pretty happy. Anything else?
Stop here.
Okay, now after I had my heart attack, it did affect my diet. Doctor wanted me to cut back on salts, starches, basically anything white like potatoes, bread, stuff like that, because bread carries a lot of sugar, not good. The funny thing about me though is when I had my heart attack, my blood pressure and my pulse dropped real low. I'm talking low. When I had my heart attack, my blood pressure was 85/51. And when I went to see the doctor, after I switched doctors from the cardiologist first one, which was Dr. Gaddis, I went to UMC. And the doctor told me, you need to quit smoking. And I said, yeah, I'm aware of that. But every time I would quit smoking for a while, I would feel really run down, really weak. And I'd go see him, and my blood pressure would be real low. My pulse was barely pumping. He goes, what's wrong with us? I said, I don't know. And for a while they put me on medications, but it just made me sick, started making me black out. And one day I said, to hell with this. I went outside and I bought me a pack of cigarettes and I started smoking and I felt better. I don't promote smoking. I don't want my kids smoking or my grandkids, but I found out that by smoking it raises your blood pressure. And so next time I went to the doctor, he goes, hey, your blood pressure's pretty good. It's 110/70. He goes, what you been doing? And I looked him in the face and I started laughing, so I started smoking again. And he goes, you're kidding me. I said, no. He goes, well, that's not good. It's going to harden your arteries. I understand that, but it's raising my blood pressure. I don't drink the way I used to, because back in the day I used to make beer. Me and my older boys, when they got of age, we started making beer. My wife said, what are you guys doing in the bathtub? I said, I'm filling the tub with water to make beer. And we started making beer. And that went on for a while until the bottle started exploding. And then we're like, okay, you know what, this is not working so good anymore. But I got into making beer for a while, and it was a lot of fun. Very good. I've been wanting to do it again, I just haven't. I still drink, but not the way I used to. I might have a beer every 3 or 4 or 5 days, every 3 or 4 or 6 months. It depends. Now, as for my diet, that has changed in the sense that I don't really use salt that much anymore. I decided to get off dairy because I started getting really bad stomach cramps from drinking a glass of milk, and I loved milk. I love cheese, sour cream. I used to eat it all the time, butter. But I started getting sick, and one day I was talking to the doctor. He goes, you getting stomach cramps, gas? I said, yeah. He goes, you're lactose intolerant. I said, well, that's how. He goes, no, you've always been. He goes, but now your intestines, your stomach is finally worn down. He goes, you're born lactose intolerant, but through the years of all this stuff, it is finally worn down on you. I said, okay. He goes, well, think about it. He goes, the milk you drink is from an animal that is trying to fatten up its calf in less than a year's time. He goes, and you're drinking that. He goes, you're not supposed to drink that. He goes, this thing, oh, milk's good for you. He goes, it's not good for you. He goes, man is the only animal that drinks milk from another animal. From a goat, from a cow. No other animal does that, except us. So I said, you know what, that makes sense. So I decided to get off dairy. And my wife said, yeah, me too. But we have big old blocks of Munster cheese. And she goes, I'm going to get done until we get rid of that. And my son said, well, I'll give it to my friend. And she's like, no, you ain't giving nothing away. And I cook for the family, but if they want cheese, I'll shred it for them and they can add it to themselves. They want more salt, they can add their own salt. I pretty much leave salt alone. I use Miss Dash. I'm not doing dairy anymore. I'll drink the almond milk, and it's not bad. It's funky in the coffee, but it's not bad. I'm not supposed to be drinking coffee because of the caffeine, but it's a bad habit I got, like a smoking cigarettes. It's just a bad vice I've got. But I have changed my diet. It hasn't really affected my family because, like I said, if they want salt, I'll add salt. I still make the same foods, just as they put in what they want. If they want butter, they put butter. If they want cheese, they put cheese. And that's fine by me. I tell my wife it's not good because it's bad for the bones, it's bad for the body, but it's her choice. You know.
That's great. Since you live most of your life in El Paso, just tell us a little bit, what do you feel or see as some of the major changes in terms of the food scene in El Paso?
Well,
not so much in your household, but in the city.
Well, you can understand, when I was growing up, and this was true at every house, back then, there was always kids running around the street playing. And I remember seeing either the light flashing on my porch or my dad yelling, get home, it's time for dinner. And everybody went to the house, and in their home they had a dinner made. There was Kentucky Fried Chicken in churches, but it was rare we ate that stuff. We didn't eat fast foods. We ate stuff that our parents made for us, or either our mother or father or sister, whoever. We ate at home. And it was always traditional stuff. Like I remember my father, when they'd buy flour, he'd buy a big old 25-pound bag at a time. Me, I'll buy 10 pounds. And that'll last me forever. And we used to go through flour like quite a bit. But we were healthier back then, I think, because we were out doing things. We weren't sitting in front of a TV playing games or this. We were out doing things. When I grew up here in El Paso, I remember we lived just maybe a quarter mile south of I-10. And everything north of I-10 was desert. So as kids, we'd go over there with our BB guns and we'd actually camp out in the desert. We'd put up a little tent and we'd sit out there and build fires. And the fast food we ate then was the Vienna sausages. That was our fast food then. If you went to McDonald's, you were lucky. Back then, you were given a quarter, and that quarter it would get you to the swimming pool. After the swimming pool, you could get to 60 food corral. You get a Chico stick, a Dr. Pepper, or a pickle. I used to like the big pickles. They were a nickel. And that was our fast stuff. Back then, you don't see that now. Now, a Coke is like $1.75, $2. I'm like, Jesus, man, we used to buy a Coke for 25 cents, get a swimming pool for 10 cents. And see, back then we were more active. I think the reason now is because now we become a lazier society. It's easier to run to McDonald's or Wendy's or Burger King or Whataburger and go back to burger. And yeah, don't get me wrong, they're good, but they're bad for you. They're very fatty. Even McDonald's, because their fries were so fantastic, well, they found out they were cooking them in lard. That's saturated fat, man. That's just bad news. We don't even do that to our kids nowadays. We use vegetable shortening and everything else. But they were using lard. And yeah, lard is, man, this is delicious. Just like bacon. Everybody loves bacon. But not good for you. You know? And I think that's one of the things seems to have changed. Is nowadays, you don't see stuff like that. Back then, my mom would buy a head of lettuce. She'd buy tomatoes, onions, and she would make the salads. Nowadays, salads in a bag. Just dump in a bowl and add your ranch or Italian, whatever you can eat it with. It's not the same. Back then, they actually did things. Now we've become a society of convenience. It's easier to just go get this made. Oh, I'm just going to run and get a burrito. I'm just going to run and get a burger. I'm just going to get a bucket of chicken. And yeah, it's good, but not good for you. And people have forgotten that when you actually sit down, like when I do the chicken, I'll boil it, cook it, then I'll put it on the grill or I'll put it in a skillet and stir it up and put it in a salad. To me, that's a nice chicken salad. But it's fresh chicken. It's not this process, which I found out this is why Kentucky Fried Chicken had to remove the name. It's now KFC, because their chickens were not chickens, it was processed chicken. A lot of people didn't know that. And I think that's one of the things about the foods today is they're trying to do things for convenience, but now you got this organic stuff coming in. And I don't know, like I say, once again, I go back to dairy. Organic milk. Pros and cons. Some people say, oh no, it's good because they don't do anything to it. And I said, well, it should be homogenized for people because actually it is not designed for people to drink. But some people say, no, it's good for you. Other people say, no, it's bad for you. I don't know. I don't try it. I've cut dairy out. I do miss the butter, the sour cream. You can't have a good baked potato without sour cream and butter. But I use olive oil now. It's better for you, and it's virgin olive oil, so that's better than butter. Well, the taste isn't, but health-wise it is. But so that's one of the things about today is that foods have become more convenient, easier access, but way more expensive. As kids, I remember getting up in the morning, every morning, go out to our front porch, and there was a metal crate with glass bottles of milk, cheese, sour cream, and big blocks of butter. And back then, the milkman, when you'd see him driving his truck, going to everybody's house and picking up your old ones and taking them and go fill them again. People don't remember that. As kids, we used to play in the haystacks at the dairies. And they'd get mad at us because we'd pull off in the middle and we'd make a little room inside the haystacks. But see, nowadays that's all changed. It's not the same. Everything's different. I don't know if it's for the better or not. The conveniences, yeah, they're much nicer. I mean, the microwave cooking, man, that's good. It's quick. You can make a baked potato in a minute. When we were growing up, my dad always said baked potatoes should be cooked on coals, not in the oven. And so he would light the grill and he'd bury them in the coal. And that's the way we did it. We didn't do pork chops too much because my father didn't really care for pork. So other than ham hock for the beans or bacon. We didn't do a lot of pork chops and ribs and stuff like that they did nowadays. If we did, they were beef. Like I said, his menudo. I loved it. Every Sunday we had menudo. And my mother, I learned from my mother how to make fresh francesitos. Pan de huevo. Empinadas. In fact, that dough I'm going to show today with sopillas, you can also use that for empinadas. But that does take a little bit of melted butter with sugar to brush on top to give it the glaze, if you choose to do that. Like I said, it just depends on what you want to do. I choose not to do that. Like I said, sopillas, some say that now they cover them in sugar and cinnamon. I prefer mine with honey. It's natural. Yes, it's from another animal, but hey, it's good. I don't mind stealing the honey. But I don't really care for them with cinnamon and sugar, but if that's what they want, I'll make them for them. That's what my grandkids like and my sister's grandkids. So I'll do them for them that way, but I prefer them regular.
This is wonderful. In some ways you answer this question, but I'm going to ask it and see if you can articulate or tell us in a few sentences. What does food basically mean for you?
Well, food, I mean, I enjoy simple food. Example, the other day, I just made a little bit of beans. I didn't make a lot. I think maybe it was a cup. And it's because the last time I made beans, nobody ate them, I had to throw them away. So this time I'm just going to make me a little bit, but these ones I made them different. I put some bacon at the bottom of the slow cooker, and I put my beans, and I covered it with jalapenos. I used garlic and salt, well, garlic salt, but very, very dense. And my son said, "You didn't put enough salt." I put very minimal garlic salt. I put a lot of lemon pepper, and I decided to get some, and they were gone. I told her, "Where are my beans?" She goes, "I ate them." I'm like, "Oh shit!" No, sorry. I'm sorry. I was like, okay. So next day I said, I'll make some more. So I made more. And I made them pretty much the same way, but then I gave some to my sister, and then me and my son ate them all. So my wife got home, and this morning she told me, "Where are the beans?" I said, "We ate them." So, gee, thanks for saving me some. So I'll make some more beans tonight when I get home. But I like cooking just basic. I mean, food to me is just, I enjoy making it. It gives me something to do. When you're retired, there's not a lot to do. I mean, I like to work on cars, but I can't do it anymore. I want to work on my bike, but I can't do it anymore. So I'm going to have to pass this knowledge on to my son. And so what I can do is cooking. And I enjoy cooking. It relaxes me. I enjoy seeing that my family's enjoying what I made. It makes me laugh when my brother-in-law comes by and, "What'd you make for dinner?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm not your cook." "What'd you make anyway?" And so I made this, this, and this, and he'll go serve himself a lot. And I tell him, hey, make sure you save some because your sister and your nephew have not eaten yet. But I mean, I enjoy cooking, and that's why I like just basic, simple foods. That's what I grew up with, and I enjoy them. And I'm hoping to instill that in my children. But I don't know, because some of my boys there, I've noticed, my son Jason, his wife, they don't like to cook. They go out a lot. They're always at restaurants. And see, us as kids, the only time we went to a restaurant was Sunday after church. And back then it was a buffet. It was called panchos. And actually, they were known for their sopapillas. It wasn't their chile rellenos or their frijoles, because that wasn't actually that good. It was okay, but it wasn't good. But they were known for their sopapillas. And I was like, well, I can make those. So I started making those. I can make biscuits. And I was asking my brother about it. He goes, I told my mom, she goes, yeah. I said, I've been making them. He goes, yeah, my wife makes them, Bonnie. I said, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, they're called salt biscuits. I've never heard them called that. I said, because I don't put much salt, so I don't know why they would call it salt biscuit. They're not your Hungry Jack biscuit. It's not a buttermilk. It's a thicker, denser. I call it Southwestern biscuit. But they're excellent to use for different things. He's a memory. He's a blast from the past. Chili Bowl Dave. His name was David Jurado. I met him one day at the bar. Walked in, saw this guy. He looked like a Cuban you would see in Miami. And his funky white hat and these funky white shoes and funky slacks. And I was like, oh my God, who's this guy? But we got to talking, and he was a nice guy. We actually became pretty good friends. One day I was at his house, and he had made some chili beans. And I've had some good chili beans, but man, those ones, I don't know how to describe them. Your mouth would turn red, your nose would run, but you couldn't stop eating them. They were that hot and that delicious. In fact, he picked up the nickname Chili Bowl Dave. One day we were at the bar, and Bobby Grayson, and I can't remember the girls that worked there. They were talking about their chili bowl, and I said, "No, you guys got to try Dave's." "Oh, no, mine are bad." I said, "You know what? Sounds to me like a chili bowl cook-off." And they had a chili bowl cook-off there at the bar. And when everybody found out, I mean, that bar was full. Everybody came because it was going to be free chili beans. And of course, Dave won. Everybody picked his, and everybody was sitting there sweating, and their nose running, and their mouth on fire, but they couldn't stop eating them. He did win, and everybody's like, wow. Even the people that challenged him said, man, you know what? These are really good. What's your secret? He goes, no. Goes to the grave with me, and you know what? He literally did take him to the grave. He passed away a few years back. Nobody ever got his recipe. His kids can't make them. I've talked to his son and his daughter, and they don't know how to make them. His mother doesn't know how to make them. She's still around. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of sad that he actually did take that recipe to the grave. I've tried, but can't match his. I know he used jalapenos and habaneros and serranos, but I don't know how he did it. I really don't. I've tried, and they're just not a match. Yeah, that was Chili Bowl Dave, good friend. Reminds me of another friend, Dave Franco. He used to live across the ditch from us. Guy didn't have much. He didn't have much. He lived with his father. He's an older guy, or he lived with his father because he didn't have much. And I remember I got him a job working with me at the Parks and Wildlife as temporary maintenance assistant. And we used to get the prisoners from the local jail. They'd come in and they'd help do whatever I needed done, the McGoffin construction or yard work, whatever we got. They were a workforce we'd use. And every day I'd have to go pick up their lunch. I'd have to drive way out to the annex, load up the truck, drive back. The prisoners, what they didn't eat, they would throw in the trash. Loaf of bread, pot of beans, whatever they had, they would just throw in the trash. And Dave would tell them, hey, what are you guys going to do with that? We're going to throw it away. Can I have it? Poor Dave, when he died, his sister tells me, man, what's with all these bags of beans and stuff in my freezer? I said, Dave didn't have much. So he took whatever they left and he took it home. And Chili Bowl Dave did teach him how to dress up those beans a little bit. He didn't give him his recipe, but he taught him how to dress them up a little bit. And they were pretty good. They made good burritos. After Chili Bowl told him a little recipe for that. Unfortunately, he took the recipe with him because he also passed away. So I've lost two Daves. But yeah, they're good friends, and they said they were good working with beans. I wish I could have got chili bowls, but didn't.
Okay.